I stretch out my leg a bit, and it's stiff from continuously pressing on the gas. Wish my cruise control worked. Also, it'd be nice if I could actually see what speed I'm going. I think to myself as the guy in the seat next to me finishes taking a sip from his water bottle. Okay, let's see. Where did I leave off? You mentioned something about getting offered to work at some youth group adventure program, but you couldn't take it because of school. All right. So I turned them down, but I remembered that Ollie and Malia lived in Washington. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Right. So I told them I knew a guy. Suddenly, my attention is snatched from the conversation by a startling and near impossible phenomena. My dashboard lights were on. My mind starts racing. But how? They haven't gone on for over a year now. Did something change? Did I hit a bump? Maybe the heat from the engine caused the wires to expand and complete the circuit. No, neither of those make any sense. The roads have been too straight and uneventful for ages now, and I've been driving for almost an hour already. Dylan continues to share his life story as I gaze intently at my dash. Okay, maybe it had something to do with centrifugal. What am I thinking? I've been driving perfectly straight for 15 minutes. I flick my brights on and off aggressively a few times. The dash lights remain on. Dylan asks me something, and I absentmindedly respond affirmingly. What could possibly be the cause of this? I glance at the settings on my right, and my eyes goes from the road and back. The only thing I messed with this whole trip was a stereo, and besides that, even if I had actually changed something, why would that only take effect now? And so my mind scraped for an explanation until suddenly I found myself pulling into the driveway. I shook my head. There's just no way to explain it. Miracles are real. Dylan said something about his trip to Malibu, which I didn't quite catch. Makes sense, I said instinctively as I exit the car, my mind still trying to understand the incomprehensible. Awesome! Dylan steps out of the car as well and takes a step toward the house. Look forward to seeing you there! For the first time in the last 10 minutes, my mind actually registered what was said. Wait, what? So, yeah, my dash light actually came on while I was driving Dylan back from the airport. Gripping, I know. But I actually have no idea why it came on. The two competing theories are angelic activity and a magical war unicorn. It's a toss-up between the two. So, yeah. While I was inordinately surprised by my dash lights coming on, I didn't actually zone out Dylan or commit anything accidentally. You know, I actually do care about people's life stories, just so you guys know. Don't get me taken the wrong way. Anyway, granted, not the most eventful life intro, but it was a pretty uneventful month. So, what can you do? So let's see. To kick this off, I'll note in passing that after I finished my last live meal, I played Minecraft with Katie and Liam, as is now our Saturday tradition. Then I did nothing useful for the rest of the night. Sunday, I read some more of the book I'm inching through, then played some chess on chess.com, watched some more anime, and then recorded my life update email wherein my voice sounded like trash. After that, because I totally was socially starved at this point in time, I hit up Caleb, who was basically indifferent to all his COVID jazz, and me and him played games at his house. We started working through this Halo campaign together. Then, upon my return, Ben and I talked about our New Zealand plans. The good news, it looks like they're going to drop the quarantine restrictions soon-ish. First quarter of the next year is, I think, what they said. And if that happens, we're definitely going. It's actually been so long, but we both really want to go back and see everyone. So, should we have sufficient funds, then it's almost certain we will rest our gaze upon the Isle of NZ once more. So yeah, upon discussing that with Ben, I did some research and then slept. And then I ceased sleeping. Upon the cessation of my sleeping, I did homework, watched some more anime, played some more chess online, went over to Caleb's house for Brawl Boys, where we all play video games for actually ages, like 10 hours or something like that. It was a lot. Since I was still not legally allowed to go to school, I took the next day, do a lot of homework before I watched some anime, and then Joe came over, and me and Ben and him ended up watching a Super Violent movie instead of My Hero Academia, which I at least 3% regret. Not my best decision ever. Then, finally, I was freed from my social prison. The next day, I smelt the social air, and then was confined in chemistry class for the next 3 hours. Yeah, I barely got out of quarantine in time for my chem lab. But I'm really glad it worked out, because it turns out making up labs actually sucks. So yeah, did that. My lab partner, his name is Robert, he got like 90% distracted the whole time and would not stop playing with the Bunsen burner. It was actually very irritating. He was like, look, it's fire. And I'm like, okay, but we needed this experiment. And all he would do is just keep playing with the fire. Teamwork sucks. Anyway, did that. Did a ton of homework. Then when I got home, as you might expect, I was behind. But after completing much of it, I did get to talk to Mike about some stuff, so that was cool. The next day I went back to work, did a pretty easy physics lab for a change, which was nice. One thing I appreciate about science labs is often, the lab itself requires absolutely no cognitive powers. You just have to follow the instructions exactly, and you'll get all the data you need. Now, to be fair, sometimes it's a lot harder than it sounds, but at least, I get to have a short period of time where no taxing thought is required of me. And then I actually have to use the data I got from the lab. My brain's just like, ah! Anyway, I then got home. I did homework. And that was a bit of death before going to hang with Joe and Noah, which was tolerable. Joe kind of murdered all attempts at nuanced conversation because Noah's actually interested in Thomism, and though things might sound stupid to the uneducated hearer, they're actually super robust. But Joe doesn't seem to get that. Goes and strangles a kitten. Anyway, aside from Joe's plenty of snarky remarks, I was able to communicate at least some things to Noah, so it went well. The next day was usual, work, school, etc. However, unlike the usual, I did have a chem exam, which I ended up getting a 87 on. So, not trash, but not what I was hoping for. I then started reading this maximally stupid book that was supposed to be a good refutation of the Thomistic view on natural law, but after I got like 100 pages, it felt more like a trash book. So I was like, well, I'm just going to throw that away. And I stopped reading it. To be fair, I remember a time in life when such books would have been intelligent to me, but I'm very far past that at this point in time, and those books just hurt my soul. Anyway, after that, I listened to this debate between Graham Oppie and Ed Fazer, and it was epic. I doubt many of you have experienced this before, but perhaps the most riveting and exciting spectator sport in existence is intellectually honest debate. Not like when one debater says some snarky line and then humiliates the other, but rather when one guy says something like, but the Leibnizian principle of sufficient reason dictates that counterfactuals of creature freedom require explanandums incapable of necessitating its effect. And I'm like, oh! I grab you by the shoulders and shake you violently. Did you see that? Did you see what he just did? That's actually a real thing, by the way. That sentence makes perfect sense. And it was one of those like very similar lines that got me very hyped up. So yeah, this debate was actually gripping because it seemed like Oppie was going to get, Fazer's argument. But then Fazer pulled off some genius intellectual move and it was so good. So yeah, I listened to that debate and it was great. After that, I went and hung out with Braden and he let me ride on his motorcycle. And I gotta say that motorcycles are now 37% cooler in my mind. Here's a picture. The following day, I watched some anime before going on a lengthy walk and trying to memorize history and philosophy. I'm actually getting really close to finishing the series. Adamson has been at this for 10 plus years, and he's finally got to the Renaissance. So yeah, I won't end up doing the whole history of philosophy, but I'll get pretty close. And then I worked on adjusting and cleaning my rollerblades before playing Minecraft into the night. The following day, I went to church and had a talk with Pastor Kevin, which was supposed to be about the reasons not to become Catholic, but it was more like me correcting him about all the misunderstandings about Catholicism and trying to convey to him that it's not nearly as bad as he thinks it is, though there are some legit weird things. So yeah, that was surprisingly better than I thought it would. I then played D&D at Neo's, and then Jeremy, if you remember him from John's campaign way back, he showed up, and apparently he's back in town for a little while, so it's cool to see him again. Overall, I think I like Jeremy. He's definitely akin to John in his jokes, and that's not a compliment, but overall, he's genuinely funny, plus, pretty based outlook on life, so that's pretty great. So yeah, I'm glad he's back for a bit. We all played Halo after D&D, and then just randomly Ben, Joe, and Caleb invited themselves over and showed up, so that was great. And we all played Halo together, and that was pretty fun. The following day of the week, the cycle started over again. So I had work, chemistry class, homework, and then Monday night Brawl Boys. Tuesday I did work, got home, read a bit of my canon book, went to physics class, and then started a long chain of rationalistic conversations with Alan about free will. I think we might actually figure this out. Breaking the timeline at the end of 3 conversations, we've definitely made progress, and I might be back into a corner that I can't get out of and just have to accept libertarian free will as a thing. We'll see, of course, but I'm just telling you, the conversations have been very good, and we really are getting somewhere. Wednesday, I did more work. I had a super stressful chem lab, as both my female lab partners were super moody and unable to handle the stress, so I meant all the composite stress fell on me. So yeah, I pulled us through though, and then I went home and unwound with a bit of anime before doing homework, and then later that night going over to Caleb's and playing games with him and Joe. The following morning, I woke for work. Then, upon getting home, I did a bit of anime searching because I'd run out once again. And after that, I introduced Mom and Grace to an anime I thought was kind of funny, and they liked it decently. And so we watched that together for a bit. Oh, and then Ben, Caleb, Joe, and I did a trip to Hot Springs where Ben brought his little projector and a sheet, and we ended up watching movies there, which was pretty great. The actual anime episodes we watched were pretty trash, though. We got back at 5:30, so that was a bit of a big oof, but overall still a good time. I woke up the next morning to find out Braden had been in a head-on collision with a car while he was riding his motorcycle in Poudre Canyon, so that was a shock. Also, very comforting that I was riding with him wearing only just a helmet a few days ago. And he could have been paralyzed, but it just so happens that the guy he hit was a paramedic, so he knew how to arrange his body so he wasn't. Besides that, he actually got off really easy with only a few, with a split pelvis and a compressed vertebrae. Both of those things super suck, to be sure, but it could, and probably should have been, a lot worse. And I'm not one to posit divine, protection necessarily, but this does certainly seem like an instance of it. So yeah, I already planned to go to the Myers that day, so I wasn't able to see him before the hospital closed. But, the Myers was decent. We played an airport, which was fun, but exhausting. And then we talked about a bunch of stuff, some of which was less than captivating, such as the tale of how some Cuban doctor dude started his own ice cream shop. But anyway, worthwhile overall. Oh, and Naomi was there, so that's cool. After that, me and Caleb met up at Southgate and played Halo there into the night, since we're trying to beat the campaign at all, and that was fun. The next day, a beautiful thing happened. See, my little sister Grace has been reading through the Curse of the Spider King series by Wayne House Batson as per my recommendation. And only recently did she finally finish book 2 of the trilogy. But see, long ago, when Sydney and I still talked and were good friends, not Sydney, not Neo Sydney, mind you, the OG Sydney. I don't know if I talked about her much before, but you know what? Tangent, let me do that. This is the tale of the OG Sydney. Long ago in a distant land far, far away. Okay, we both, those are relative terms. It took place in I was 16 in New Zealand, so relatively true. Anyway, during that time, I was stuck in a little house in the countryside with nothing to do except play video games, explore, and be creative. All of which I did in abundance, might I say. But because I had so little free time and lacked anything that resembled a life, not little free time, I had so much free time, I would occasionally visit the online forums of my childhood favorite author, the aforementioned esteemed Batson. And one of those very dead forums I put a post upon, like a note in a bottle cast out to sea in unrealistic hopes that it would be read. And surprisingly, a single person, Wait, no, it's gone! Ah, big sad. I tried to look up the forum where I first met Sydney, it's been deleted. Well, that's a piece of my childhood ripped from my soul. Anyway, I don't remember what her username was, but we got talking, shared emails, and of course, the first email I sent was like, full disclosure, this is not a romantic relationship, because I've always been tactful like that. But yeah, over the next 2.5 years, we sent over 1,000 emails? Yeah, it was a lot of emails, so we got to know each other pretty well. And since we're both into writing at the time, and we're both huge fans of Wayne's, I came up with this idea, and I was like, hey, why don't we write each other a fan fiction in one of Wayne's universes with the other person as the main character and send them to each other? And it took a bit, but she agreed. So we got working on our novellas. Now, originally, the stories were only supposed to be around 15,000 words. I think that was the length we agreed on. But as anyone who writes creatively will know, things evolve, and it's often very hard to keep the word limit you started with. So, during my last summer in New Zealand, I decided to quit playing video games and devote a large portion of my time, averaging around 4 hours a day, to just writing this, what became a novel. So, every morning I'd hop on my bike, ride to the Hamilton Library, where I'd then write for the next however long before heading home. And so I toiled like this up until nearly a week before we left. And then I finally finished what I came to call Shadowstone. So yeah, that's how I wrote my second book, starring none other than the OG Sydney as the main character. As very few of you have read it, you probably won't recognize that. And then we read each other's stories, and it was good. All that jazz. But her fanfic of me is never going to see the light of day. And I wonder if I even still have it. 30 minutes later. Wow, that was really nostalgic. I reread all those emails. Oh, I need to reread all those emails someday. And it'll take more than a day, so maybe like a week. Okay, aside from revisiting my childhood, do you know how hard it is to find something in a pile of 1,000 emails? It's stupidly hard. You know what? Maybe I'll send her an email asking if she has it. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Anyway, that was the scenic route to how Shadowstone came to be. And so, all that established, what actually matters is I situated that fanfic between the second and third book in the series Grace was reading. Thus, when she reached that point, I persuaded her to read my book before the third one was in the series, and she just so happened to said it was the best book she ever read. Now, granted, I can count the number of books Grace has read on 2 hands, so I know that's not objectively much of a compliment, but nevertheless, it did really feel pretty great that she loved it that much. Talk about delayed gratification, though, right? So yeah, that was a pretty rewarding moment. After hearing such words, I then stopped by Lunch Bunch at church, illegally robbed them, and then went to go see Braden in the hospital. We talked a bit, and we were interrupted by a bunch of medical things, and he had to do. He actually got out of the hospital later that day, so that was great. So yeah, I went from there D&D, and then instead of doing Bible study at Neo's, we all went over to Braden's house and did Bible study with him. So I thought that was a pretty considerate move on our part. Then, upon heading back to Neo's, we all played Halo, and Caleb joined up with us. Also, Caleb and I raced off the line at a stoplight, and my car beat his. Just thought that needed to be pointed out. The next day, the cycle started once again, work, school, homework, and then Monday night, hanging. However, Monday nights have begun to get better because Noah is really getting to Thomasum, asking some really good questions. Tuesday, I had work and physics, and then me and Alan pressed on in our lengthy treatment of free will. Wednesday, I had work, not chemo lab, talks about the time frame I'm in, chem lab, talking with Noah, Rational Christy Noah, about orthodoxy, and the talk about fine-tuning I signed up to do. And at that time, so I gave a lecture. At that time, Noah presented what seemed the most powerful reasons to become Orthodox over Catholic, because he's leaning that way. Most of us in the core Rational Christy group recognize the weaknesses of the Protestant faith. But I talked to Alan afterwards, and it turned out that I misunderstood the Catholic position, so his objections were not nearly as forceful as they first appeared. After that, I hung out with Michael, and we had a good talk, and then I spent some time with Caleb and Joe, which was once again good. So yeah, overall, socially, quite the eventful day. I got out of work the next day to go to my CEC advising appointment, which went well. As long as I don't fail physics, then I should graduate come December. After that, I went to my physics class, where I ended up forgetting my computer charging cord, which surprisingly was really inconvenient. Only when your computer is dead do you realize how much you use it. Anyway, once I drove to Front Range and picked up my cord, I did some homework and watched some anime. Friday, I had work and chem class, and I also applied for FAFSA and got a 0 EFC, expected family contribution, which is fabulous because that means in the government's eyes I'm maximally poor, which means I'll get maximal financial aid next year. I then went and played soccer, hung out with Grace, and then watched some anime. Saturday, I did homework, donated plasma at CSL Plasma, which is way better. They actually stabbed me right the first try, which was beautiful. I then played Minecraft with Katie, Liam, and Noah, and then had a conversation with mostly Alan over prayer and Bible reading. And then Ben, Caleb, and I all played Halo together. Sunday I slept in because I was up late playing Halo the night prior. I then played D&D, did Bible study, and showed Jeremy and John the Catholic doctrine of purgatory isn't as crazy or as unbiblical as people think, which was a nice change of pace because a lot of the Catholic dissing goes on in that group. And it was good to have an intellectually good conversation about, some of the doctrines. But yeah, later that night, Neo and I walked and talked, and it was really good, and we stayed up till about 1:30. More work the following morning. After chemistry class, I then got Five Guys with my dad, and we talked a bit. After that, I did homework for 3 hours before joining the Brawl Boys in Brawlhalla and Minecraft, and then hitting the sack. I worked the next day, reading a tiny bit in my canon book, did physics, talked with Joe, picked up Braden, and went to Ratchet Christie where Alan and I whiteboard fought, and we rounded out that night talking to Esther. Wednesday, more work, more chem lab, more homework for like 4 hours, then I hung with Joe and Caleb. I slept past my chance to donate plasma next day, which is a bit of a sad, otherwise known as a small sad, as Joe often points out. I took my calc physics test, which I thought I absolutely crushed, but I just got it back and I got an 82, so apparently I misunderstood much more than I thought. I then watched some anime, drove to the airport and picked up Dylan, an old friend from the New Zealand days, and hence the start of this email, and then I went to sleep. The following day I did work, went to school, talked about the problem of evil with one of my classmates, played soccer, caught up with Jordan, then hung out with John until 3 in the morning playing Smash Bros. I donated plasma the next day, endured the essence of death as my parents took photos of me, played some Minecraft, and then hung out with Joe. See, early in the day, Caleb sent us this GPS location on maps where he was going camping for the night. And so, at like 11, me and Joe were like, let's go drive to Caleb. So we grabbed donuts in Longmont and drove up this back road and we're not able to find him. Thus, we left a donut in his stead. Oh yeah, I forgot we did that. I wonder what the people who live up there will think when they see that. Anyway, aside from not finding Caleb, me and Joe had great conversations. I was able to inform him of the basics of Thomistic metaphysics, as well as defend my view of authority to him, both of which were quite valuable conversations. But yeah, we got back real late, and as you might expect, that was unfortunate that we missed them at the campsite. The next day, Mom helped me cut out this template for this new shirt I'm making. Here's a pic. It says, if I seem swaggerly confident, it's because I am. After that, I went to Neo's, did D&D, did Bible study, went on a Walmart run with the gang, and then played Smash Bros. Into the night. Monday was more work, another day of chemistry, another 4 hours of homework. And then, in addition to normal Brawl Boys, we met with Jake and Charity, which was 10% death. This was incredibly boring. Don't get me wrong, I like Jake. But when he gets talking about how fast King Kong can run, I 100% question my life choices. Oh, right, he's going to be narrating this, isn't he? Hey Jake, how's it going? Not gonna lie, I'm writing this partially just to see how you handle addressing yourself in the third person. I'm not really one for sugarcoating things, so we're just gonna keep it all in here. So yep, did that, played Minecraft, and then went to bed. I then was late for work the next day, which was a big oof on my part. However, I did make it. I then worked on jotting down some notes for the presentation I was about to give Ratchet Christie that evening. I went to school, hung out with Braden, and then drove us both over to Ratchet Christie, where I gave a talk on fine-tuning for God's existence. I think that went really well, actually. Braden found it so convincing he's now a theist, at least of some sort. He's willing to grant a non-spatial temporal mind. Plus, I've heard I am regarded as an intellectual god amongst the new people in Ratio, so that's both epic and terrifying. But yeah, after that lecture, me and Alan secluded ourselves and worked through more free will stuff. And then he, Liam, Braden, and I went over to Braden's house to play some Smash Bros. In the night. Wednesday was back to the usual work, chem lab, lots of homework, and in this case, a bit of time just spent chilling. I also completed the college application form for South Dakota Mines, so we'll see how that goes. I didn't have work Thursday. I did have school, so I did that. I then got home, did some homework before going shopping, because my family's gone to California for my cousin Luke's wedding right now, and so I must buy food. Then me and Michael talked for a bit at the end, and he couldn't understand this SCP article, which I, being intellectually competitive, then spent the next 2 hours reading until 1 in the morning, which was a mistake, because I had physics homeworks I should have been doing. But I did understand it, so I got that going for me. Yesterday, I did more work. I took a chem test and didn't get the results yet back yet. I did homework, played some soccer, and then went over to Noah's place for some lame hang time. He had the original Smash Bros, and oh my gosh, that thing is so pixelated, it's actually ridiculous. I only won once, which was very vexing. Once I got home, I watched a tiny bit of anime and went to sleep. This morning, I woke up and got my life sucked from me, and then upon getting home, finished this shirt that I'll show you, and I've been writing this email ever since. Oh, I also forgot this happened, but I also printed out Liam's depiction of the D&D party on my wall, and that's pretty sweet. So yeah, there you go. Life update email number 39, done and done.